people who aren't philosophically inclined. What I mean by not effective, right, is that I think the NTT argument works, but only if you accept only for like very narrow like certain metaethical positions, and um and that's like the kind of the view. So I'm not going to argue against NTT to you. What I'm going to do is rather I'm going to show you the types of like objections that could be brought up to NTT, um, and why those like types of objections being brought up are kind of relevant to whether or not the argument would be effective. And this is going to be also in reference to other types of arguments for veganism or vegetarianism, right? So there are other like types of arguments for veganism and vegetarianism that I do think are very convincing. So, for example, I think our guy who like got us or organizer sent you the two papers I sent, which is core diamonds, eating animals and eating people, and cross guards, and Kantian argument for animals as an end to themselves. Right, and I think those two arguments are very, very convincing. And the Kantian one, the Kantian constructivist one, is actually probably a lot less like has like probably some less baggage than NTT.
Right. So by effective, you mean like specifically? What do you mean?
I mean, ability to convince someone of an argument, right? And I also then clarified effective. It is effective for non-philosophically inclined people. So people who aren't like super educated on metaethics. Like if you go to your average person on the street and then ask them to name a trait, a lot of people don't know what the fuck, right? They do like a lot of their moral positions. So of course it's gonna like NTT is gonna work on them, right? And then I even also clarified that it does work for very, very particular types of metaethical and normative ethical positions.
So, by effective, you just mean the ability to convince somebody of veganism?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the proposition is NTT is not effective, or NTT does not have the ability to convince somebody of veganism. Like I'm just trying to, or is not likely to.
It's not effective to.
It's not effective to convince somebody of veganism.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually effective at doing that. But
Okay.
particularly like not like for like a more like philosophically inclined or ethically inclined person, right? So somebody who knows about like metaethics and like metaphysics and the stuff that goes behind MTT. And I even granted that MTT works for some types of metaethical and metaphysical positions.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that NTT is not able to convince somebody of veganism?
No, wait,
Okay, yeah, I just need further clarity. You just mean like it's not likely that that people will be convinced by it?
I think I clarified my position several times. So I
okay,
said,
well, you just give it to me straight. I'm sorry. Just give it to me straight, please.
Philosophically inclined, right? So people who like know these positions, right, are not going to be usually convinced by NTT, and I can give you the reasons why. I think that it's not convincing, except for like a few meta-ethical cases,
Okay,
right?
so NTT is not effective at convincing people of certain meta-ethical positions?
No, certain the proposition that like veganism is true, right?
Okay, NTT is not effective at convincing not convincing people of a okay. I might have just lost track. Just one more time. I think you might have actually cut out at one point in time too. I think I'm losing something.
Okay, so when I say like effective, it's gonna be like likely to convince people, and I'm gonna say it's likely to. I also clarified why, and this is a very important clarification. It's not likely to convince people who are philosophically inclined or educated like on philosophy, right? That doesn't mean it's wrong, right? I don't think NTT, and I think NTT works on particular meta-ethical positions. So I had to add those two like things of nuance, right? And I can give you, and so that's what I mean, and I can give you the reasons why I think it's not likely to convince these people.
Okay, so NTT is unlikely to convince people who are philosophically inclined of veganism. That's like the ballpark of what you're getting at.
And particularly, it can I will say that it can convince some people, right, who are philosophically inclined, who hold very particular metaethical positions, very
So,
specific metaethical positions.
I'm just going to ask one question, and this will kind of determine where we're going to go with this. Are you saying that it is the case that NTT is unlikely to convince people who are philosophically inclined to veganism, or are you saying that you have an intuition toward that?
I I think I have an intuition towards that.
Oh, okay, then I don't disagree.
All right, well then debate over, I guess.
Yeah, I don't disagree that you have that intuition. But if you're
Yeah.
making a positive claim that it is the case, I just need data. It's an empirical
Well,
claim.
then then I can justify, right? I can just justify my intuition though.
I mean, yeah, sure, everybody can justify every intuition. That's fine. That's fine. That's not interesting to me.
But if
But
my
if you're making
intuition
the claim that
justifies
NTT, if you're like, listen, it's an empirical claim. NTT is unlikely to convince people who are philosophically inclined to veganism. I just want data, or we're done.
data or you're done. I don't think that's how what we talk about when we say like when we go in to do something, we don't like do something first and then like get the data after that and then say
Well,
you're
no,
done.
of course. I mean, of course.
I'm saying that you're
I'm looking
wasting.
for the data.
Like,
I'm looking for the
I mean,
data that informs the prop. I'm looking
I'm
for the data that actually substantiates the empirical claim. It's an empirical claim. I'm assuming that data is the thing that would be brought to the table to substantiate it, right? You're talking about likelihood, which is in the domain of statistics. So I'm just
well, no, you don't really need, right? I don't really need like statistical data to justify this. I can just give you a good outline of like philosophical positions and then see like whether or not these philosophical positions would be easily convinced, right, by like NTT or not.
well,
And that's
again,
just
that would
justifying
just be something
intuition.
empirical. Like it just sounds like a bunch of intuitions. Like, do you have any data on the effectiveness of NTT among this demographic? Yes or no?
Yeah, but if I have an intuition, I have a reason to assert that intuition. Then it's
Sure, I
enough.
don't deny that. But if you're saying
Well,
that
then
it
it's
is
enough.
true,
Then it's enough for me to assert it as true.
excuse me?
So if I have an intuition, right, and I have reasons behind my intuitions, it's enough for me to assert it as true, whether that be prudential reasons, whether that be epistemic reasons. It's a warranted assertability criterion, not a justification criterion.
I'm not sure I'm appreciating what you're saying. Like, I'm not sure I'm understanding it. Like, this, you're making a claim about the way the world is,
Yeah, and
right?
I'm justifying my intuition about the way the world is. And I don't necessarily need, right? If anything, right, you're the one going around trying to convince people of NTT. And every time I see within like my philosophical groupings, right, I see people not convinced, people who are philosophically not convinced by NTT.
Well, wait,
However, right?
just,
Wait,
I want to flag
however,
something really quick. I want to flag something really quick. When you say convince people of NTT, what specifically are you referring to?
to change their alethic attitude towards a proposition. So
Right.
to change their
So,
belief.
so I take NTT, or at least so far as I use it, because I don't really run any syllogism for NTT. Not really. I take NTT to be a dialectical procedure. So, like to convince people of NTT just sounds like strange to me. Like convince people
Well,
of a
then, yeah,
dialectical procedure.
and I
I
think
mean,
the
I
dialect.
don't really take
So
NTT to be something to be convinced of. It's like a type of conversation.
if it's a type of conversation, then why are you providing metaphysical explanations for the conversation?
What do you mean?
So NTT has several metaphysical interpretations, right? And they've consistently changed their metaphysical interpretations, and they provided it as syllogism. Unless you're providing some different, unless you acknowledge that NTT is a rhetorical tactic, right? Then that's fine. But you also like the rhetorical tactic requires, right? It requires certain metaphysical commitments too.
I'm not
That's
entirely sure like what metaphysical is referring to.
first principles, reality, grounding relations,
I don't
particularly
understand what grounding is supposed to be referring to either.
grounding relations, like a dependency relation between like two objects. So like there's like causal
Oh,
ground, like what causes
oh,
another.
okay. So
Yeah. So like,
in that case, like I don't know why you would say metaphysical in turn and not just say like reality or something.
because that's the domain of the study is metaphysics, the physics of physics, right? And when you go in, right, and a lot of MTT relies on modal claims, right, because you're giving me different hypotheticals. And you're telling me there's a different possible worlds, right? I need you to actually commit to certain types of modal claims. But in being
If by that
agnostic,
you just mean like I'm committed to the proposition that X is like logically possible, then sure.
yeah, this is where I'm differing. So I don't think logical possibility is going to be morally relevant, because if the natural laws were different, then our like moral more moral facts would be different as well, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So if you're a moral naturalist, right, you're going to think that moral facts are going to be reducible or not irreducible. You can say they're irreducible, like they're supervenient. Reducible or supervenient on natural facts, right? And that's going to fall in the realm of nomological possibility, because if the natural laws are different, the natural facts would be different. So the moral facts would be different.
I mean, that's assuming that moral facts are like the types of facts that you're talking about.
Well, that is assuming that, but you're the one coming in, right, and trying to test somebody else's moral system, right? So you're going to go come in and you're going to say, hey, your view holds that there's some trait, right, between humans and animals that allows us to eat animals but doesn't allow us to eat humans, and this trait's non-equalizable, right?
Well,
Therefore,
no, that's not what I assert.
that's not what you
No,
assume.
no, that's not the way the dialectic actually goes. I just asked them what is the trait that accounts for the asymmetrical moral attitude. That's all.
Yeah,
That's
so
all it is.
you ask them for what is the trait, right? But
Mm-hmm.
now you've entered their, since you've been metaethically, since the view is metaethically agnostic by it being a dialectic, right? You've now actually entered their metaethical domain. So you're going to have to accept their metaethical facts, right, and their modal facts and stuff like that.
Well, not necessarily. Well, I mean,
Well, if you don't, then you're not doing main the trait anymore. You're doing a different argument. Now you're arguing for like metaethics, for metaethical views.
well, yeah, it sometimes goes in that direction. Like some people will have like a response, and they'll say something like, um, you ask them to name the traits, and they'll have some tangential response that doesn't interact with the question, and they'll say something along the lines of, "Oh, there's no stance independent moral reason to be vegan," or something like that, where it doesn't even answer the question, but they're dragging metaethics into it anyway.
Well,
And then
see,
sometimes we do end up having a conversation about that particular proposition.
now you're not even
Sure.
really engaging in name the trait at that point. So there's three possibilities I think that can happen when you're doing name the trait, right? So
Well, no, it'd
possibility,
still be. I mean, yeah, I agree that at that point we're not doing name the trade anymore. I even just said it was tangential. Like,
yeah.
listen,
So at that point we're not doing name the trait anymore. Then I don't know why you're gonna. If we have to involve like so many other types of arguments, like why are you gonna say that it's effective?
wait, do I claim that it's effective?
Do you claim? I don't know. Do you claim that it's effective? Because
Effective
you're
at
the one.
what? Converting people to
Convinced.
veganism?
Yeah. Do you think it's effective?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
No,
Well,
I don't know. I don't take a strong view on it.
then why are you employing the argument?
Um, it's interesting. Tickles my fancy.
There's no. It's just interesting to you.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
can we get back to the proposition like NTT is unlikely to convince people who are philosophically inclined to veganism? Again, empirical claim, I just need data. And if I don't
Yeah,
get data, I got
I'm
better
telling
things to
you
do with
that.
my time.
Yeah, I don't think our standard of evidence are the same here.
Yeah, I take empirical claims to just be the types of things that you would need to like provide kind of data for, especially this kind of empirical claim where you're probably going to have to be like surveying people and collecting qualitative data about like how people are feeling with being exposed to this argument versus that argument or this dialectic versus that dialectic. Like that's the kind of evidence that you'd need to bring to the table
You know what?
to
Actually,
convince me.
I can actually like provide you, like evidence. Go on Phil papers right now and then look up name the trait and go see like how
um
many articles bring up or are discussing name the trait.
how would this be evidence in favor of the proposition?
It'd be evidence in the favor of proposition because it seems like academic philosophers are not taking this argument seriously or this dialectic seriously.
And that means that it's not effective at veganizing people who are philosophically inclined. Why?
I mean, if they don't even take it seriously enough to like
Well, how do
talk
you
about
wait?
it,
How do
then
you
what
infer that they're
do
not
you do?
taking it seriously from the fact that they haven't written papers about it? Seems like a non sequitur.
That's what you would do to justify like wait, what? Like if you're taking something seriously, you're gonna write a paper about it.
Wait,
Like
what's
if
the
it's
argument
serious
for
enough,
that? I take plenty of things seriously and I don't write papers about them.
yeah, but if you're an academic philosopher and it's your job, right, and you work in normative ethics,
Maybe it's not your focus. Maybe it's not your focus.
so like all these like rights, all these like animal rights like journals, right, all these normative ethical journals, none of them mention the NTT, right? There's not a single. I can't find this. Well, maybe there's like maybe one I can think of. Actually, I don't think of any. I can't think of any NTT papers I've seen in animal like rights journal or whatever. None of them mention NTT, right?
Right.
And
So I'm just trying to get clear on how that's more expected on the prop.
how is that more expected on the prop?
Yeah.
It's going to be more expected on the prop because if they did take it seriously, if academic philosophers did take it seriously, you would see more people writing about it.
Um, maybe. That's unclear to me. There are plenty of things that people take seriously that they don't write papers on.
Yeah, but if you're talking about a whole sample group of academic philosophers, like all the animal rights focused academic philosophers, and none of them mention NTT, none of them are talking about name the trait, right? Do you
Mm-hmm.
think that this is not like, you know, this isn't like really comfortable for your position? If not,
Well,
if you don't have that intuition, right?
listen, I'm not taking
Then
a
like,
position here. Like you're defending a
well,
prop. I'm not taking a position here. Like,
I
so
mean,
your proposition is NTT is unlikely to convince people who are philosophically inclined of veganism. The fact that people in that domain haven't written papers about it, it's not clear to me how that's more expected on the prop than the negation of the prop.
because if I don't take it seriously, it's probably not gonna convince me.
Um, sorry, I'm not sure
If I
how.
don't take, so like for example, one of my arguments I give against like um brain in the vat cases, I consider them like papered out, so I don't really take them seriously, right? I don't think they're relevant or like important enough for me to like even deal with them. So no brain in the vat cases really convince me, right? Like that. So that's an example, right? If I don't take like tag arguments seriously enough, it's probably not going to like, convince me, right? It's probably not going to convince me if I'm not taking it seriously enough that I'm not that there's like no papers written on the topic. It seems like it's not going to convince me, right? I would love, I would love to see a paper on NTT from an animal rights journal, right? I would love to see it. That would be like a very interesting paper. But so coming here, right, and saying, oh, well, that doesn't follow just because, that they're not writing papers on it means they're not taking it seriously. Like,
Well,
there's tons of
wait.
there's
It's not
things.
about whether or not they're taking it seriously. It's about whether or not it's likely to convince philosophically inclined people of veganism.
Yeah, and then I gave you, and if you don't take something seriously, it's going to be less likely to convince.
Listen.
Right?
Among the people who are philosophically inclined, a small sliver of those people are academics, and they're not writing papers on it. There's like a huge demographic of people that you're just leaving out, and somehow I'm supposed to accept that NTT is less likely to convince these people of veganism in virtue of the fact that the academics haven't written papers about it.
Yeah,
Like, I'm just
only really consider the academics here.
okay, so I should change the proposition to NTT is unlikely to convince people who like philosophical academics of veganism.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I only really consider the academics here. I think like most Discord philosophy is like silly.
And you're also kind of assuming that these people who may even be convinced by it have even been exposed to it. Maybe they haven't.
I can guarantee you, like, I've exposed like a lot of like academic philosophers, right, to like NTT, right, and my
Right. So
university,
an anecdote isn't going to move my needle here. Like all I want is
so
just some kind of
so
evidence.
wait 1 second. So wait 1 second. Yeah, an anecdote isn't going to move your needle. However, right, I'm still giving you like an illustration of my intuition and why my intuition is probably warranted, not justified, warranted. There's a difference between warrant and justification, right? My intuition is warranted, right? And that every case, right, every case I brought up NTT to like, academics that I know, like PhDs that I know, it seems to be the case like every single time they have some major objection to it, right?
Well,
Some
listen,
really they bring up, right? And then they always bring up other arguments that are actually convincing towards veganism. Now, you know what? You're the one now saying here you're agnostic towards the claim, right? That it's actually effective towards people. And yet you've, you know, consistently used NTT
It's
and then
irrelevant.
said that people were, wait, let me finish, and said people were destroyed, demolished by NTT, right? I don't think you're actually agnostic toward the claim, and I think you're acting in bad faith.
No. What's the argument for that?
I told you the argument why. Like
Okay,
I
so
said, look at your channel.
because I say that people have been smashed by it, it means I think it's likely to convince people who are philosophically inclined or something.
I said that you've consistently using it. You think it's probably like likely to convince people, right?
Listen, my attitudes toward it are like irrelevant to the proposition you're putting on the table.
No, your attitudes toward it are relevant because you've said we were agnostic towards it. That's why
Yeah,
your
I
attitudes
am agnostic toward it. I want evidence for the claim.
You want evidence for the claim? I gave you evidence, and you didn't say it was evidence. And if you don't accept that intuition, if we have different intuitions, we can just end the argument here, because this is like we're gonna go in circles consistently.
I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't exactly know where to proceed from here. It's an empirical claim. It requires empirical evidence, not like some argument to an intuition.
Yeah, I think that like an intuition has warrant. So I mean,
I don't know what the hell you mean by that.
It's like you know about warranted assertability criteria.
Just plainly explain like what you mean by that.
So like you may not have like justification for some beliefs, right? Like the external world, but you have warrant in asserting the external world existing, right? Like you have prudential reasons. You may have like mostly like prudential reasons for why that. You may even like appeal to seemings or common sense beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all these things would like give you warrant in asserting, but none of them are reasons to believe it's true. Like there's just because like it seems to be the case, right, that the external world exists, doesn't mean that it is the case that the external world exists. That's not like a justification. That's just a warrant, right? Because just gives me warrant to assert it's true.
So by warrant, you just mean it's something that you like. It's brute. Is it like it's something that you don't have a justification for, or
that's not what I said.
Well, no, I'm just trying to get clear on what the hell you're talking about.
So I told you, I had said I had warrant in asserting that it's true. So okay. I told you, right, there's a difference between warrant and justification. Justification provides reasons for belief. Warrant provides just reasons for me to assert that it's true. And those are two separate things, right?
Wait, what do you mean reasons to assert that it's true if not in reference to some kind of inference or justification?
If it's an inference, it's going to be like prudential reasons. They're not going to be like reasons, like it's not going to be like epistemic justification. It's going to be like prudential justification.
I don't know what the difference between those things is.
So prudential is going to be like pragmatic, like, oh, well, the reason why I believe I believe electrons exist, even though even though I haven't like studied science or anything like that, is because the scientists seem to be correct and electrons do useful things for me, and it's useful for me to believe electrons are true. So I have warrant in asserting that electrons in science is correct. I may not have justification, but I have warrant in asserting it.
Wait, but it sounds like you have justification for asserting it.
Well, I don't think seemings are justificatory. I think they provide us warrant, not justification. Those are two separate things.
Yeah, I'm still not clear on this warrant concept. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry for you. You know what?
Like, because it just sounds like a different kind of justification. Like, it sounds like a different kind of like deductive inference to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's a deductive.
Like they both sound like justification.
Well, just because something seems to be true, right, doesn't mean that it is true. It seems to be the case, right, that a pencil, right, is bent when I put it in water, right?
So okay, wait. Is all this just to cash out into the proposition? It seems to me to be true that NTT is unlikely to convince people who are philosophical academics of veganism or something like that.
And I can actually like hold like phenomenal conservatism if you want me to, and then you have to provide.
But is that what it cashes out into? Like, it seems to me that NTT is unlikely to convince people who are philosophical academics of veganism. Is that what it's cashing out into?
Yeah, and yeah,
Okay,
and
then I don't disagree. That I don't disagree that it seems that way to you.
yeah, but I'm now justified in asserting like warrant in asserting my seeming without defeaters. So
Okay, yeah, you can just say like it seems that way to me, and I
yeah, but
can't
I'm a,
offer a defeater that it seems that way to you. Like,
well,
and
that's
it's
not it.
also completely trivial and uninteresting to me.
So no, the issue is that seemings, right? That seemings are justificatory if in absence of defeaters. So I'm asking you to provide me a defeater now
Wait, seemings are just justificatory.
in absence of defeaters.
Wait, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So, for example, here's a seeming that is not justificatory. When I put a pencil in water, right, and the pencil bends, that's not justificatory because there is a defeater. I can pull the pencil out the water, right? So that's an example of a seeming not being justificatory. Now, a seeming that is justificatory is that it seems to me that the external world exists. You can't
Mm-hmm.
really provide defeaters for why the external world exists. I haven't been provided any convincing defeaters. So I'm,
Oh,
justified in
okay, yeah,
saying,
that's a game I'm not interested in playing. I'm not gonna try to like defeat your seemings. I don't care about that. That's not a
oh,
game
well,
I'm
they're
actually interested
justified,
in
so
playing.
you lost. They're
What?
justified, so you lost. Yeah, I told you I'm a phenomenal conservative, so they're justified, so you lost.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that if you want, but at the end of the day, it's an empirical claim and requires data. So, I mean, you're
Yeah, but
free to your seemings. I mean, like, it depends on what the claim is. If the claim is just like I have this seeming, then it's trivial, and I agree, right? But if the claim is literally that it is the case in the world that
yeah, and
NTT is unlikely to
so
convince blah
I'm
blah blah
saying
blah blah,
because of my
then it's
seeming.
an empirical claim and requires data.
So I'm saying because of my seeming, right? Because of my seeming, I am justified in asserting it, right? In asserting this claim in absence of defeaters.
Well, you're justified in asserting the claim that you have that seeming. I don't care about that. That's trivial, like I said.
Do you think you're justified in asserting the claim that the external world exists?
Listen, like, can we just talk about this? Like, I don't
No,
understand what the problem is.
you don't understand what the problem is? I think you're just actively trying to avoid the problem. The
I don't
problem is
even know what the
I think
objection is.
I said that
Like
my
the
seeming.
the objection
I
to
told
NTT is that you have a seeming that that is
so my
unlikely to convince people who are philosophical academics of veganism.
yeah, and that objection, right? So when I say seeming, right, I'm saying a seeming is justificatory towards the proposition in absence of defeaters. You haven't provided me a defeater for the
Yeah,
seeming.
but wait, what's the proposition? Is the proposition that you have the
Proposition
seeming?
No, the proposition is that it's not unlikely to convince people, and I said that the seeming is justificatory. Now provide me a defeater.
Wait a second. No, this is okay. So, what proposition are you affirming to be true? It just
I'm
we have
holding
two.
that's unlikely to
We,
convince people. So wait,
okay,
okay. But let me actually, I'll lay it completely out for you, right? So I said, right, I said it's unlikely to convince people, right? It's unlikely to convince philosophical academics, people who are philosophically
mhm.
inclined, of veganism. I then said that I'm justified in asserting that because of my seeming, right? And then I said, because I have a seeming, and it's an absence of defeaters, then I'm justified in believing that to be true, or actually like warranted in
Wait,
asserting
so like is all this just to say that you have this belief and you can provide some kind of inference to that belief? And that and one of and the proposition the premises that form that inference is just like an appeal to your seemings?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
So that justifies the proposition.
It's some justification for the proposition. It's not justification that I would necessarily accept. Like it's
Well,
not. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm agnostic toward the proposition. You have some justification toward it, but
and now
the
I have
pre
warrant asserting it to be
but
true.
the
So
premises that offer support for that are just like an appeal to your seemings, and that's not something I'm going to disagree with. It's like, okay, I'm agnostic toward it, and it seems like it's true to you. Okay, we're done here. Okay, cool.
oh my dear lord. Hi, Marco. Yeah, like, oh, I have to like go out and Yeah, that was like pretty based. I don't know. I didn't know I had to bring up phenomenal conservatism to like